Mel Tucker and his team had a show last season, and they also put on a show for themselves at 2022 Big Ten Media Days. What I like as a Michigan fan here, talking about Michigan State, what I love about the Spartans is they don't care how hard the job is. They look at it, they analyze it, and they attack it. And that doesn't exactly mean that in the blink of an eye or the snap of a finger, a very poor snap by myself, I'm not good at snapping whatsoever. But anyway, they get the job done. They work toward the goal. And that's really what we're going to be talking about here today, is Michigan State recruiting and talking about some questions for Michigan State to open fall camp. As Michigan State, they lost Kenneth Walker, Jacob Panashuk, Drew Beasley, guys on the offensive line. They lost Quavarius Crouch via the portal, though very deep linebacker room, but still, he was a starter, so it's worth mentioning it. There are questions for Michigan State to open fall camp. I'm going to be reading a subscriber-exclusive article by mlive.com. I was able to read it because they were offering, at the time that I decided I wanted to make this video, they were offering a 7-day free trial where you could read subscriber-exclusive stuff. So I'll put the link down below in the description in case any of you are interested in checking it out, in case any of you have a subscription to MLive or want to test out that 7-day free trial. I'm not sponsored by them or anything. Just interesting that it's subscriber exclusive, but it contains a lot of interesting information, and I just want to put it out there. And I'll also be going over Michigan State's 2023 recruiting class, which is currently in the top 25 and has 10 4-star commits. 10 4-star commits. Michigan State only had 10 4-stars on their roster for the 2021 team. Only 10 4-stars on their roster. So Michigan State recruiting is on this massive uptrend. The program as a whole, you feel it, whether it's NIL and Mel Tucker and Michigan State announcing today, I think, that they're coming out with NFTs and other NIL stuff that can help benefit their players, coaches, and program, whether it's the fact that they're, winning games, going 11-2 last year. And I'm very impressed with this program, the state of it, where it's going. I made a video discussing my thoughts on Michigan State entering 2022, and that I think they will go 8-4, 9-3. They'll by record regress from last year, but how overall they are heading in a very positive direction, and that I think that they are certainly a top 25 team. So I'm going to be linking my own video discussing Michigan State and my predictions for them, or rough predictions for them in 2022. I will be linking that down below in my description as well, and I encourage you to check it out. First and foremost, I want to talk about Michigan State recruiting. So let's get right into that. Michigan State, the number 24 recruiting class in the nation, 10 4-stars, 3 3-stars. The top overall commit is by Job from Community Christian School in Norman, Oklahoma. He's an edge player, 6'4", 215, committed on July 7th of 2022. He is the 71st ranked player according to the composite, 73rd according to 24/7 Sports. And at 6'4", 215 from Oklahoma, I think it was Alabama and Oklahoma who were competing with Michigan State, and Mel Tucker and Brandon Jordan, who is the pass rush specialist and a good recruiter, got him. Also, you have a recent commit, who just committed 3 days ago on August 1st, in Stanton Ramil from Thompson in Alabaster, Alabama, 6'7", 310 offensive tackle, top 200 player, ranked 197th in the nation according to the composite, 201st nationally according to 24/7 Sports. So Michigan State's recruiting exceptionally well. Again, 10 4-stars in one class. The class only has 13 commits, and I guarantee you they're going to get even more 4-stars. And Michigan State, according to 24/7 Sports, is still in the running for David Hicks, who is a 5-star defensive lineman, top 10 player out of Texas, and Samson Okunlola, who is out of Massachusetts, offensive tackle, and he's a top 15 player nationally. So both 5 stars there. Michigan State is also listed as warm for 4 stars Miles McVay, an offensive tackle from Illinois. Defensive lineman Jalen Thompson, who is out of Cass Technical in Detroit, Michigan. He's a top 200 player. And Jaden Bonsu is also a safety, listed as warm for Michigan State. So Michigan State's in the running for 4 stars, even 5 stars. Do I think that they will get, both David Hicks and Samson Okunlola? No. It seems that they're not in the lead for either. But the fact that they're just there, that Michigan State is getting in they're entering the top 10 and top 5 lists for players, and they're competing in recruiting, if we're being honest, with these bigger schools like even, Alabama and Ohio State and Michigan. And they're not recruiting at that same level yet, but they're not afraid to compete with schools who are bigger than them, who have more resources than them, who win more than them. And it's impressive. And it's one thing that I like about Mel Tucker and his approach that he takes to football and that he takes to recruiting is that they're not afraid to take on a challenge. Michigan State football under Mark D'Antonio, not necessarily in regards to recruiting, but just on the football field, they were never afraid to take on a challenge. Never. They would always compete. They would, for the most part, always try their hardest. Yeah, there were some games where, like with any other team, you'd get humiliated, but you knew that Michigan State would come, they'd show up. It's a reason they beat Ohio State several times when Urban Meyer was there. It's a reason that Mark D'Antonio had a winning record against the University of Michigan. And Mel Tucker has taken that aspect of the D'Antonio culture, the resilience, the never-ending persistence, and he's added charisma to it. He's added some more sense of excitement, youth, and adaptation to the program, bringing in new ideas, and he's brought it to the recruiting trail. And those two things combined can make up a very great program, a program that can be competitive, and the program that I think will be competitive. Saw it last year. I don't think it's going away, and I do think myself as a Michigan fan that Mel Tucker, with the way he's recruiting, I think is on track to probably winning a Big Ten championship in one, if not more, of the years that he is at Michigan State. So Michigan State's recruiting in a very impressive manner. I by no means am a Spartan insider or anything, but Michigan State being in the running for guys like David Hicks, Samson Okunlola, very impressive indeed. There are no current new crystal balls that I see for Michigan State. Michigan State, of course, is favored to land Jalen Thompson, who is an in-state prospect who is listed as warm for Michigan State, Cincinnati, Ohio State, and Penn State. Also had an official visit to Pittsburgh on June 2nd and Cincinnati on June 10th. So Michigan State's likely going to get a few more 4 stars. You'll probably see several 3 stars get added as well. Maybe they can land Samson Okunlola or David Hicks. That would be huge. That alone, just them landing that one player would be enough for me to make a full-length video on it, because that would be huge news. That would be absolute breakthrough for Michigan State recruiting and Mel Tucker's program. So just a little update on recruiting, and now I want to talk about the questions regarding fall camp, and this is where the MLive article that I was talking about earlier comes into play. 5 questions for Michigan State to open fall camp, and I listed most of them on here. Most of them. Not all. I listed 4 out of the 5 from the article. One of the questions is regarding who's the backup QB, and I'll talk about that a little bit. But since Peyton Thorne is basically guaranteed the starting job, there's not really a competition there. And because it's highly unlikely he's going to get injured, I'm not going to make it a huge talking point. I'm just not. And Peyton Thorne is a very good quarterback. I can't see him, even with issues at O-line and even with some departing production in the backfield that will, I think, it won't positively affect the play action game. He's still a great QB. He's a much better QB than I think anyone else currently on the roster. And that's just, he's a good QB. There's an argument for him to be, he's certainly a top 7 Big Ten QB. There's an argument for him to be in the top 3 as well. The offseason, preseason, there is no offseason, is coming to an end, the article writes. Michigan State reports for fall camp on Wednesday, and the first practice is Thursday morning. In his second season leading the Spartans, Mel Tucker guided the team to an 11-2 record, which surprised everyone, and finished ranked in the top 10 of the polls. They'll be looking to follow up on that success and have even higher goals this season, with Mel Tucker talking about they need to bring a championship to East Lansing. The goal is to win all of their games, finish first. Very bold goals, but I like it, and I like the attitude presented by it. And Michigan State, if they went 11-2 last year with the roster that we all thought was going to be an atrocity to the Big Ten, they can do it. They can do even bigger than that this year. Now, there's a difference between the potential to do that and what I think and what many others think will actually happen, but Michigan State proved everyone wrong last year, so they can absolutely do it again. Question number 1 is, what does the running back room shake out to be? I think that's question number 1. Kenneth Walker last year won the Doak Walker Award, rushed for over 1,500 yards, had nearly 20 rushing touchdowns with 18, and some would like to say that, you can replace that, but the reality is likely that you can't replace that. That is a very hard thing to replace. I think that it is almost a guarantee that Michigan State's running back room takes a step back. Now, if the offensive line improves and the running backs are still good, maybe the run game in itself can still be similar or at moments more consistent, as there were some games where Kenneth Walker was very effectively contained, other games where he absolutely blew everything out of proportion, like the Michigan game, for example. Tucker hit the jackpot in the portal, landing Kenneth Walker last year, and I think he did it again this year with Jarek Broussard. Now, I'm not going to say Broussard is Kenneth Walker. I'm not going to say most running backs are even at that level currently. But having Jarek Broussard there and also having Jalen Berger there, 2 incoming transfers, Berger, 4-star talent out of high school, Jarek Broussard, someone who was not very highly recruited out of high school, but was very good in 2020, was good also in 2021 as a running back at Colorado, and having both of them there got depth at the running back room with Jordan Simmons, Harold Joyner, Elijah Collins, and Broussard rushed for 1,556 yards and 7 touchdowns in 17 games over the last 2 seasons combined, after missing his first 2 seasons due to a pair of ACL surgeries. Berger, a former 4-star recruit, as I mentioned, led the Badgers in rushing as a true freshman in 2020, but only appeared in 7 games over a total of 2 seasons. He left the Wisconsin team last year, didn't see a lot of action, didn't look very good. I'm much higher on Broussard than I am Berger, and I think that, you got Harold Joyner, Elijah Collins, Devion Prim, Jordan Simmons. You have depth at running back, even if only one of those was to transfer in. So having both of them here certainly helps questions at running back room. I think Broussard's going to be the starter, and whether it's Berger, Joyner, Collins, Simmons, or Prim, one of them will be a backup, and I think you'll see more of a rotation than you did last year with Michigan State's run game. Up next would be who emerges as the backup QB. There really isn't a competition there, so I'm just going to briefly go over this. Peyton Thorne, thankfully for Michigan State, beat out Anthony Russo for the job last year. I thought last year in the preseason that Peyton Thorne was Michigan State's hope at quarterback. If they wanted to win anything in 2021, they had to start him over Russo. And they did, and it was a huge part in why they won so many games. The Spartans, of course, are hoping the backup quarterback is essentially a non-factor, but one bad snap, one injury, one ACL tear, one broken bone, and that can all be over. Other quarterbacks on the roster, scholarship players, are redshirt sophomore Noah Kim, redshirt freshman Hamp Fay, and true freshman Caton Hauser, who is a 4-star coming out of California and an early enrollee. Kim appeared third on the depth chart last season behind Thorne and Russo. I would say it's, again, I'm not a huge insider here, but probably going to be Kim. Hauser will probably be redshirted, but Hauser, I'd say out of all those three, looks to have the most talent. So just briefly going over that. Up next, what kind of depth will there be on the offensive line, and how will the offensive line operate this season? Last year, Michigan had veterans at every position. The offensive line regularly going 9 deep as part of 2 primary groups through the first half of the season before injuries thinned out the rotation. The Spartans are now facing a much different outlook after losing 3 starters and experienced depth. They return only 5 offensive linemen who have taken a snap in a college game in starting left tackle Jared Horst, starting left guard J.D. Duplain, center Nick Samak, 10 career starts, right guard Matt Carrick, 18 career starts, and right tackle Spencer Brown, who made his first career start in the Peach Bowl win against Pittsburgh. Brian Green, a graduate transfer from Washington State, who made 10 starts in 30 career games with the Cougars, arrived in May and has experience at center and both guard spots. Carrick missed the final 6 games last season after an ACL injury and wasn't available in the spring. If Carrick is healthy, that will certainly help to contribute this fall. And injuries have regularly been taking a toll on Michigan State's offensive line, both last year and in the spring. Michigan State's likely going to need some younger players to step up at times. Redshirt sophomores Dallas Fincher and Brandon Baldwin and redshirt freshman Kevin Widgenton, Ethan Boyd, and Gino Van DeMark are among those in that category. So watch out for those names. Who at linebacker is going to step up and start? Because the linebacker room is very deep. You have Cal Halliday, you have Jacoby Widman, you have Aaron Brule. The latter two are transferring in, and they haven't played football in the Big Ten, no. Aaron Brule played in the SEC. So it'll be pretty similar competition in that regard. And Windman dominated in the Mountain West. And if you dominate in the way that he dominated over there, he's going to be, I'd say, at least a solid player in the Big Ten. And Cal Halliday had an absolute breakout season last year. He had 2 pick sixes that I think were the difference between the Spartans potentially losing those games against Indiana and against Pittsburgh. So a very clutch player. Someone who I have on my first team defense as a first team all Big Ten defense in his linebacker position. He tied the team lead in tackles, returned 2 interceptions for touchdowns, and was named a freshman All-American by the Football Writers Association of America. Ben Van Sumeren and Ma Giottiotti are also back after being members of the playing rotation, and Darius Snow moved to linebacker in the spring after starting at both nickelback and safety last season. And then again, you have Aaron Brule and Jacoby Widman. Brule had 141 tackles, including 17.5 for loss, 17.5 sacks, and 2 fumble recoveries in 40 career games over 4 seasons at Mississippi State. Windman posted 169 tackles, including 18.5 for loss, 12 sacks, and 3 forced fumbles in 30 games over 3 seasons at UNLV. Defensive coordinator Scotty Hazelton in the spring said they are attempting to cross-train the linebackers for both spots in the 4-2-5 scheme, except for Windman, middle, and Brule weak side. The linebacker combinations in the spring game were mixed up, including using a third linebacker as an edge rusher. David Ojabo, linebacker, but primarily used in that edge rush position to rush the quarterback. The Spartans have more depth and versatility at linebacker than they did a year ago, and perhaps more than they have in the past several years. I am very high on this linebacker room. I'd say Michigan State has probably the deepest linebacker room in the Big Ten. Nebraska has the best duo of linebackers in Luke Reimer and Nick Henrich. And Wisconsin has the best overall linebacker in Nick Herbig. So when it comes to the linebacker room, Michigan State is certainly up there. These next two questions, not as much time spent on them as I've talked about them before, and some of these are just left up for speculation, and we just kind of have to see how the games play out. How much will the secondary improve? That's a big question, and part of it relates to who takes over as the top quarterback. Xavier Henderson and Angelo Gross return as starting safeties, and the Spartans are establishing depth behind them. At cornerback, though, you have a lot of room for competition. Ronald Williams, Chester Kimbrough, Marquis Lowry, Charles Brantley return after all starting at least one game at cornerback last year, and Michigan State adds Amir Speed from Georgia. I think Amir Speed, by far, because of his time at Georgia, is going to be the best secondary player when it comes to coverage. Xavier Henderson is probably going to be the best overall secondary player because of his leadership and because of his statistics and tackles, his ability to just, they use him for blitzes and stuff, and his leadership as well that I've already mentioned. So the secondary is an area with a lot of questions because Chester Kimbrough, Angelo Gross, you're talking about a lot of guys who last year couldn't cover. They just couldn't cover to save their life. And it's going to be very interesting with Harlan Barnett returning and most of those starters who weren't very good in coverage last year returning. I'm curious to see how much they improve. And I think they will, because like Mel Tucker said, it can't get worse than last year. But if you're a Spartan fan, you want to hope that they do take big steps forward. And even if they do take big steps forward, they're likely not going to be a top 50 secondary because of how far up the ladder they have to climb from how low they were last year. And finally, does the offensive scheme change? And this is a question that I came up with on my own, and I'm asking it because with the injuries to Nick Samak and other injuries on the offensive line and the run game likely taking a step back because Kenneth Walker was just that amazing of a playmaker, he saw holes that the staff themselves admitted they didn't see, and he made plays out of them. That's a special quality. That is an insanely special quality that you don't get out of most, if any, running backs guaranteed in a given year. So because of these things, do you think that Michigan State, and I answer this in the comments below, do you think that Michigan State sees a bit of an offensive scheme change where they're just going to pass more? And I know that Mel Tucker and the staff, they want to establish the run game. They've talked about it. You even saw it in the the Peach Bowl versus Pittsburgh when they didn't have Kenneth Walker. They still wanted to run the football. But do they do what they did last year against Pittsburgh in that fourth quarter where they really aired it out and when they had success doing that? Because I'd be very interested to see if they do air it out. And I think with Jaden Reed, with Daniel Barker, with Peyton Thorne at quarterback, that it might be in Michigan State's best interest for them to air it out more this season with some issues at offensive line and their main departure at running back in Kenneth Walker. Those are my questions for Michigan State entering fall camp and honestly entering the 2022 regular season, which I cannot wait for. If you're new to the channel or if you've been watching it for a while but like this video, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, and comment your thoughts down below on Michigan State, their recruiting, the state of their football program, and questions that you have for Michigan State entering fall camp and entering the 2022 season. And if you're listening on Spotify, make sure to follow the channel. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys around. Bye.